Okay, so I got interrupted in the last installment, so I'm going to keep reading. It says chapter 17. I'm gonna read the paragraph that I left off on. It's about mind control. It delineates basically a hell on earth by the elites and programmed reality, fallen angels, things like that, aliens, all sorts of stuff. MK Ultra, sex slavery, all of that. When I had sex with David, it's an autobiography. When I had sex with David, even prior to this, when I would say David in my head talking to his consciousness, I would hear back Soros, Soros, Soros. I knew they were all piling into David while we were having sex. The technology and the COVID shots paired with 5G allowed them to pile into someone's subconscious like being John Malkovich, but it doesn't have to be permanent. They could jump bodies seamlessly without the avatar knowing it. Things David did with all these consciousnesses manning him may not have been all his fault. All of the people with the COVID shots could be hosts to these entities. I believe they target more men than women, as they are mostly men in the higher ups that are using the system to have sex with women, or in this case, me. Video gaming the avatars was the purpose of the shots. As I danced endlessly, some of the entities fell in love with me. Soros specifically loves when I dance ballet. I'm not great, but I dance as if I'm not disabled, as if nothing is wrong with me, and when I dance, the world seems like nothing is wrong. I gained their respect and love through music and knowledge. I was just waking up one day when I saw a massive animal that was almost see through. It was this long serpentine looking thing. It looked like a dragon head, kind of. Like kind of like a dragon, but it wasn't. As there was a starry sky around it and within it. It had tentacles coming out from what seemed like its stomach, but it emerged from a pool of glistening water. I heard, "Isn't it beautiful?" There was a castle atop a hill in the background. It was beautiful, but I was scared. I heard that Gaia was imprisoned there, and I fought to get her back, as I had a sword in the astral. I freed Gaia, and we went to the lower regions of the plane. One of the gods popped their head out from a stormy sky and asked me if I was coming with him. I put gods in quotation marks because they're actually demigods. After all I had been through, I imagined that God would have more to say to me than that. I said no, as I had become somewhat accustomed to seeing other gods on the astral, and you had to be careful who you went with because the majority of the Greek gods were rapists and incestuous and murderers. Come summertime, David and I decided to go back to my hometown and go out somewhere. I brought all our laundry, which was a ton of stuff, and we checked into a motel. We stopped at my house beforehand. I decided to take a Percocet and a Valium that I had left over from old scripts. We went to the bar, and I began shooting pool. I got myself a cherry coke and left my drink around willy-nilly. David shape-shifted again, this time into Danny. I started to feel loopy and started to speak to David as if he was Danny because this was who I was looking at. David became antsy and took me out in the parking lot and yelled at me to get him an Uber. He said, "I'm going back to Michigan if you don't get it right now." I got the Uber and I yelled back at him, "You don't talk to a woman like that." We got into an argument at the motel and he went to the bathroom to call someone. David had no friends, so I assumed it was a female. I threw a glass of water on him when he exited the bathroom and I proceeded to call the police on him, but I really don't know why. By the time I got back to the room, he was gone. I called the police, and eventually that night I ended up in the hospital again. They took me in, and upon administering a drug test, I popped positive for barbiturates. Someone knew I had taken other medications, and there was a possibility of me overdosing if they drugged me. My dad came to pick me up and drove me back to David's the next day. I still wanted to stay with him, regardless of all the things he did to me. I had made it a habit of ignoring the signs when it came to David. One day he had literally thrown me out on the road a mile from his house in a rainstorm because I laughed at him about having nothing in his apartment. He had told me if I leave I could never come back. He would even threaten to sue people working on the road because they were in his way. He was absolutely impossible sometimes. I remember one time the power went out and we walked to a hotel near his house so he could play video games. I had a blister on my foot and I tried to get him to call a cab, but he wouldn't. He didn't even seem to care that I was in pain while walking. He got drunk and started crying about how many women had aborted his babies because Grace had told him she had to keep day after pills. Had told me she had to keep day after pills on hand because of David's fondness of impregnation. It was very reptilian of him. I burst out laughing as I tried to take him with a grain of salt because it was absolutely ridiculous. The second phase of the government's plan was on August 8th, 2023. The government had used massive lasers, I'm assuming like the direct energy lasers made by Raytheon, to incinerate Maui. The celebrities' houses that were not affected were painted the Virgin Mary's blue color. The places affected were being taken by the government as eminent domain. The government swooped in and took the land. It's prepared for the smart cities. It's in preparation for the smart cities, which is part of Agenda 2030. Dave and I went to Albany together in the fall. He left me there after a particularly abusive and drunken night, and my father had to come pick me up. He locked the door to the apartment, and I called the police as all my stuff was in there, and I asked the officer, "Can a pathological liar really love someone ever?" The truth is, the Antichrist was speaking through David and controlling his avatar. When he went with Wegos, he controlled another avatar. I got word later that David had 153 containers, and that may have been clones of past lives. And he bounced around in collecting money, and that was why he had $383 billion. The officer was kind and stated he believed he could. He was a hopeful, like me. What I should have asked him is if narcissistic sociopath could love someone. I'm sure his answer would have been different. David treated me awfully, but I still wanted to be with him. I stayed instead of leaving with my parents. When it came to my birthday, David drove me home but didn't stay. He said he had gone out for a present for me. When he didn't show up for a week, I questioned him. He told me he bought a ring and a house. He even taunted me, asking me if I was going to show my TikTok friends my new house. He had told me he wanted to get a matching Jeep to his. Get me a matching Jeep. It got more and more ridiculous, and he did none of the above. He didn't even get me a present, and he didn't show up afterwards. He just left me there for like a week and didn't come back. Chapter 18. I woke up to a man that looked like a god taking a piece of my hip bone. Moreover, I felt him taking it. It hurt. He was going to make universes with it. He started pretending he wanted to create with me and asking me what kind of animal-human hybrids I wanted to make. He seemed to need me, in some way, to create anything, and he had become frustrated with me very easily. If there have been entities taking pieces of me this entire time to make their own shit, then it was no wonder I was always in pain. An evil entity seemed to be chasing us. The man started rushing me, and I was about to give up when Gaia grabbed a hold of me. She was this beautiful pink jellyfish-like creature, leading me to planets to impregnate them. She was very patient with me and just told me to stay with her on the astral plane as it was easy to get lost. We impregnated multiple planets, and a calm fell over me like no other. I was doing my makeup when I saw a female general in the astral plane commanding a team of men to open up my skull. There was an entire facility full of people on my side. They were a bunch of extraterrestrial spiders inside with some vegetation of some sort and what looked like water. They had emptied it out, and I assumed my brain grew back. I was shown a screen that had the balance in the middle, black in some places and white in others. The black areas were demons, and I started moving the balance around to eradicate the demons. They kept breaking through somehow, and I was destroying them. The object of the game was to make the whole screen white. I fought for over an hour at destroying the darkness in the universe. When we were done, it said, "Simulation over." I was in the back room when I saw the heavens that day. I was brought up by the angels to be cleaned off. They started checking my body for witchcraft. I was littered in it. I don't remember all of the things they took out of me, but I do remember a shield of some sort where my eye and temple were hit. Someone wanted me to stay alive. They checked my armpits, in between my toes, behind my ears, and between my legs, etc. There were items of the occult everywhere, like items of witchcraft, like pins, like all sorts of weird stuff. These items correlated with spells that the demons and fallen angels had put on me. Basically, like also the Illuminati and like all these masonry sects, they do witchcraft and curses, and it can do they can do all this crazy stuff. That night, I started to feel the souls coursing through me. I felt my dogs in me first, and I kept trying to hold on to them as they kept falling through. I heard Lucifer, the Antichrist, and Grace, who must have been a Lilith at the time, as she was sent to take care of him. She brought David things constantly. Lilith was the first female born, I believe, my first daughter. She married Lucifer, and I later heard that was because he could give her something I couldn't: children. The Antichrist and Lucifer spoke to me softly, almost lovingly. Grace was upset with me and started writing a story that was weaving itself in my intestines. I felt the story unfold inside me, and my intestines would tighten up as if it was woven. In the story, everyone in my family was framed for something and went to prison, and I was left on the streets with nothing and was to become a methamphetamine addict. The story ended with me slitting my wrists in a gutter on a rainy night. I gained demons from writing that story. One popped up behind me, and it was at least 8 feet tall. He sniffed my hair from the writing of that story, because I didn't write it. He sniffed my hair and told me I smelled pretty. I explained to him and another demon that popped up that I didn't write that story, and he and another demon that I had acquired moved over to where the Lilith was, or where Grace was. She started dancing and flirting with them. They seemed disgusted and would have rather been with me, for I just spoke to them like they were people, asking what they had done to become the demons they were. I believe one of them was a murderer, and the second one was gone before I got a chance to talk to him. Who was in charge if I was gaining demons from someone else weaving a story for me? I hear I didn't gain them. They just popped up to scare me, and they were trying to terrify me, but I wasn't scared. I was just calm and collected and told them they didn't belong there. It seems like everyone is too busy being power hungry to actually be watching over on anyone except for the Gaia, the consciousness, for I am just the avatar. So the angels were actually watching over me too. It wasn't, the angels have been watching over me as well. It was, I didn't mean to write that. I didn't realize at the time. I felt kind of abandoned at the moment for some reason, but I forgot to say that the angels were watching over me too. Everyone was watching me. I found out later. Both sides had been watching me constantly. The Illuminati have writers for the stories of your lives if you get to the point where I am. They will write in your demise. When you get to that level I am, you have multiple people writing in your end based on how many people want you dead. I had everyone's attention in the interstellar community and all the multiverses. There is no end to how many dimensions worth of these people and how many versions of them were writing things into my life at this point. But it was pretty apparent these people either wanted me in a hospital setting for the rest of my life or dead at this point. The Holy Trinity for this era is Mother, Daughter, and the Holy Spirit. In previous times, I thought it was the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. It's always been the Mother, Daughter, and the Holy Spirit, but the evil side's Trinity is the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, because it was Lucifer, the Antichrist, and me. Because it was always the two of them that came after me to try and kill me in every life that I had. This is not the first life those two entities have come together in order for my demise. My most certain past lives were Gaia, Eve, Mary Magdalene, Goody Proctor, and Anne Frank. I also believe I was Athena, Delilah, Emily Dickinson, and Alice Liddell as well. When I was Eve, the children were torn away from me. I was shackled and only used for progeny. The children were raised by the fallen angels. They were touched, and that is why we have pedophilia today. Children who are touched when they are little have a higher rate of becoming pedophiles themselves. When the fallen angels ate Eve's apple, her innocence, it created original sin, because it was rape. That is why women experience the periods to this day. It was a curse. As Mary Magdalene, I was self-taught how to read and write. I lived in a small village. The kingsman came for me one day, proposing marriage to a nobleman. I refused. I believe this nobleman was the Antichrist, as he and his father came for me in every lifetime. My father took me aside and told me of the consequences of my actions. I kissed him on the forehead and told him everything would be all right. They came for me the next day and tied me to a post in the center of the square. Men took turns raping and beating me. A boy that I liked and had entertained the idea of marrying one day joined in. In a mom mentality, people do things that they wouldn't normally do because it excuses them of their actions. I was left for dead as my family was told that they would be next if they were to help me. A band of bandits found me and rehabilitated me. We ended up fighting wars against the nobility. We were a revolution against the crown. I did battle plans, for I knew things that I shouldn't have known before because of or shouldn't have known because of my telepathy. They ended up capturing me and crucifying me for 28 days. All the afflictions that your Christ supposedly had were bestowed upon me. They were actually my wounds, not his. I've suffered with stigmata wounds all my life. I have 2 dabber burns that were accidental on my hands in almost exactly the same spot. Whatever you may think about marijuana, it actually helps fight against mind control. The left nephrectomy at birth is the side wound. I have a massive scar. My feet would blow up when I went home, and I had to soak them. My back hurts constantly from carrying the cross. Fibromyalgia is what they called it. And my migraines and my skin burned terribly, and that was from another past life and voodoo and stuff. Um, my migraines are the crown of thorns. Jesus was with the 12 apostles, makes 13, and there are 13 fallen angels. They have systematically tried to get you to give yourselves to Lucifer, hiding all evidence that Mary Magdalene was actually the Savior. I always thought that I suffered the pain of the world in my body, and now I know it's true. My gospel was hidden at the Covenant of Christ by the Knights of the Templar for a period, and now is either at the Vatican or under the Sphinx's feet, where all the world's secrets lie. So, the Covenant of Christ, I think, is in Portugal, and the real Gospel of Mary Magdalene has never surfaced. Mary Magdalene was actually Jesus' mother from the Gaia timeline, the Virgin Mary. In the Gaia timeline, the son of the goddess Mother Nature is Lucifer, who is Jesus in the Mary Magdalene timeline. Because Mary Magdalene never had sex after she was raped in the square. So she never willingly lost her virginity. They convinced all of you to give your souls up to Lucifer through the Bible, stories about Jesus. Joel Osteen is an evangelist who goes on and on about Jesus but throws up satanic hand signals for Baphomet and his family photos. When Hurricane Harvey hit, he wouldn't let anyone into his megachurch when it could have provided adequate shelter for so many displaced people. If you're not going to live by God and help people, you have no business selling people the image of righteousness. He is selling you a fake God and a fake Jesus, and he knows it. As Goody Proctor, I ran a holistic apothecary. I did alchemy and made botanical soaps, encouraging people to bathe in the earthly waters to wash off witchcraft. I made trinkets to go on trees to ward off evil spirits. With the introduction of the Puritans came occult practices. I was the first witch burnt at the stake. That's where the burning skin came from, I think. The stigmata, or the past lives and stuff. And I think they might have been burning voodoo dolls or something with my hair or something crazy like that. I don't know how they do it, but they collect these items from you, like their souls collect them and bring them back to them, something really crazy like that. Or they're brought into a different dimension, like the 4th dimension, and they do witchcraft there. John Proctor was the Antichrist and Danforth was Lucifer. History was rewritten in the Illuminati image. I owned my own property, and this was the reason for my husband's betrayal. Property rights were the reason women met their demise during Puritan times. It has to do with money and restraining the feminine energies. In the case that women own nothing, their power is stripped in a monetary sense. So I just heard I wasn't married to John Proctor. I never got married, but he was my boyfriend. But in the movie, he was, my husband. As Anne Frank, I was part of a special edition sex slave women's ward. Hitler was the Antichrist and Mengele was Lucifer. I was primarily their slave, and they tested sexual tortures on me. They took my book and published it. It was lucrative for the Illuminati. They did the same thing with Emily Dickinson's poetry. Emily Dickinson wasn't a lesbian. She fell in love with a priest who then left her for another woman. I'm assuming that this was the Antichrist. She fell ill and sat in her room for room writing. I've seen myself at her window staring at a wintry tree and feeling her sadness, her loneliness. The Illuminati saw they could profit from her work, so they did. I'm Nobody, Who Are You has always been my favorite, alongside Howl by Allen Ginsberg. Delilah did not betray Samson. The cutting of the hair was actually Delilah's hair, and symbolic of them losing each other, is what I thought. I thought that Samson was taken away for war, and Delilah began speaking out against wars and became a target, and she was targeted and taken down, but I actually think Samson may have betrayed her and caused her demise. I'm not sure if what happened. I'm being told that's what happened, but I'm not really sure. Athena is the goddess of war and wisdom. Chapter 19. I was sitting watching Nightmare Alley when all these Sumerian symbols started showing up in my visual plane. I started to become angry for no reason. I remember David was sleeping and he woke up angry, which was no surprise, but it was weird. I knew it was some sort of incantation and it was evil, as the Sumerians were the Mars aliens, where the Anunnaki were the Watchers. They congregated on Mars for my demise. They weren't from Mars originally. They originally all had their own planets. Around November of 2022 is when my consciousness must have been able to hack Google.com. It just showed up on my phone. I screenshotted various things off of this website. I found a file that was all kitty games and machines, on Veef, which was some kind of interface. The White House briefings that included the death of Luke Oil President from falling out a hospital window, which was most certainly an assassination. A list of accounts leading back to P.O. boxes in Peachtree, which happened to change them from when I was viewing the screenshot as opposed to just looking at it on my phone. Files listed as confidential, the guillotine games led back to a user named The Owl, which I believe was covert from a lock. My doorway information, and a file in SAP that listed perfumers' names with Egypt in the corner, which I believe is covert for sex trafficking. Eos Pastine, I could have sworn said Epstein before I screenshotted it, and Savage, Johnny Depp, is on there. Savage, which correlates with Johnny Depp, is on there. And I hear that all the celebrities have their hands in sex trafficking. Unfortunately, I didn't look at the whole thing before screenshotting it. The entire website went down after I took shots of these files. I called the FBI and they told me thank you for calling and hung up on me promptly only after getting 3 sentences out. The FBI takes payouts in order to keep this mafia running, and they didn't even want to hear what I had to say. The guillotine games had to do with zombies. I'm not sure if they have a version of this for civilians to play, but there weren't very many participants in this version. I screenshotted those as well. Like, there weren't many people who subscribed to it. But I later found out, Obama bought 30,000 guillotines during his administration. And I later found out that they do have mock zombie apocalypses in, like, unmarked towns across the nation. They have, like little zombie apocalypses with, like, undocumented immigrants. And, ICE hands them over to the elites to do these kind of practices. I'm not sure which one is the dummy and which is the original, if any of them. They could have changed them when I screenshotted, but I will include them anyways. These are the account numbers I uncovered. 081000045, P.O. Box 291, Minneapolis, Minnesota. All of these up until the one with the next P.O. Box are the same P.O. Box. 08200000138, 091000080, 101000048, 10300000240, 111000038, 112000011, 11400000721, 121100034, 051000033, 1000 Peachtree Street, 11 East, 5105039, 05200000278, 05300000206, 06100000146, 06400000101, 071000301, 08110 081000045, P.O. Box 291, Minneapolis, Minnesota. 08200000138, 091000080. Those were also 291 P.O. Box 291, Minneapolis, Minnesota. The other list: 019100080, P.O. Box 291, Minneapolis, Minnesota. 101000048 with the same P.O. Box. 103000240, same P.O. Box. 114000721, same P.O. Box. 121000374, same P.O. Box. Then there's 51050339 1000 Peachtree Street, 11 East. 052000278, 053000206, 061000146, 064000141, 0910080, P.O. Box 291, Minneapolis, Minnesota. 101000048, 111000038, 112000374. And those are also P.O. Box 291, Minneapolis, Minnesota. I hear those are the right account numbers and the first set are the wrong ones. I was in the living area when I first saw the angels in their truest form. They were now a grouping of dragons, seraphim. They rejoiced and all roared at the same time, this beautiful song to my ears. I posted everything everywhere. Fugitive K on Facebook has the list from SAP on it, as well as the account numbers. It doesn't actually say Johnny Depp. It just says Sauvage, but that correlates with Johnny Depp, I think. Shortly after hacking Oogle.com, I was drawn outside. I was just wearing a jacket with nothing underneath. I was barefoot and stood by the road. When I looked up the clouds, the clouds were becoming animals. It seemed I was looking at UFOs. The reptilians had a clear transmission. I started blinking wildly and received all their messages. A woman saw me on the side of the road and stopped her car. She came up to me and tried to get me to acknowledge her. When I didn't, she called the police on me. She called mental health on me when I didn't talk to her. They showed up to the house and I was still entranced. David came out of the house but didn't even pay any mind to what was happening to me. I was told they were going to experiment on me when they took me to the hospital. I was absolutely terrified. At the end of the transmission, the reptilian said, "Eve, you are the most fallen." While I was waiting to be admitted, I saw a god, or a demigod, in the room alongside of mine. They had me fill out some sort of form in the astral to get me closer to salvation. The thought entered my mind that Grace could have David back. It appeared on the paper. My redemption shot up. This wasn't what I wanted. It was what Lucifer wanted, as he was increasingly more and more jealous of me with David. Lucifer entered my room as a big lion being that walked on 2 feet and had a massive mane. He was outlined in white, and you could basically see right through him. The god told me not to talk to him, or the demigod. Do you have any idea how hard it is not to think things? Even if I didn't want to talk to him, not responding telepathically was difficult. They were trying constantly to convince me that I was not the god, the first god, and the only real god. Lucifer showed me David having sex with Grace through the wall at a cheap motel. I desperately tried to get the paper back, but I couldn't. It had already been written for me. I was able to burn all the pictures astrally, and I had sent Lucifer while he was Brock, because they do like witchcraft on these things. Hell could curse every single one of those pictures, and there were hundreds, if not thousands of them, or the fourth dimension, whichever it was. I'm not sure if it was actually hell. The hospital took out my piercings, and I was admitted. Now I realize I don't think hell was created. I think it was just the fourth dimension, which was like a shitty dimension that the reptilians came from. Like a post-apocalyptic dimension. So like a hell of sorts. David brought me a box of chocolates while I was there that they couldn't give me because of hospital restrictions. He also left me Grace's number as he didn't have a phone at the time. He was very sweet sometimes. Most of the times you couldn't tell he was inhabited by the Antichrist at all. When the doctors asked me about what was going on, I simply told them I saw a UFO. There was a guy there that was going through all his past lives with me. He was important people, and when I asked if he was telling the people there, he responded yes. I didn't tell him anything, and I didn't tell the doctors anything. He may have been a plant there to get me to divulge who I was. I sat completely quiet as not to let them puppeteer me the entire time. That happened before. I saw myself in an institution on the astral plane long term. Mental wards were created to keep people from escaping the matrix. I won't say it is the entire mental health field because going to therapy helps you with your past and current traumas, but it's not spiritual rehabilitation. A lot of mental health people ignore spirituality, and anything with numbers and symbols, you're classified as schizophrenic. You can't discuss anything spiritual, anything about aliens, or anything about CIA declassified documents in a mental ward. Anything that is getting you closer to the truth. If you tell them you're telepathic or you're having spiritual visions, it is just more reason for them to try and put you away forever. It's actually part of the diagnosis for schizophrenia, thinking you are a religious figure, believing in the government's after you, and alien encounters. I was diagnosed bipolar and set free after a week. In fact, you know the character Hannibal Lecter? He is modeled after the head of the CIA, William J. Burns. I spent whole days and whole nights dancing. It was almost Christmas when I started hearing that my stream had gone worldwide, and I had all the Illuminati watching on all different dimensions. This actually went throughout the whole multiverse. They were watching me, like, everywhere. And they have different TV stations for things, like, to watch you on different dimensions, like the Black Mirror episode. They watch you like that. The elites on all different dimensions do that. All of the evil people in the world, including Putin and Xi Jinping, now had access to watch me, which simply meant they had more people that wanted me dead. I got word that Xi Jinping plays with little girls' heads and Putin likes virgins. All the countries of the world were online. I heard that the Human Genome Project was a cover for the government making stronger, more evil alien hybrids for the takeover. Or just more alien hybrids. I got naked and set up my tablet in the kitchenette. I saw Joe Rogan getting out of bed and coming to watch me. Aren't we just going to kill her? I heard. I prophesied that Joe Rogan was Cain and Alex Jones was Abel. I even saw him, like, getting out of his bed with a mahogany headboard and, like, white sheets. They had already tried to kill me 3 times, and over the course of my life, it was too many to count. I had been raped around 9 times, had been attacked 4 times by an individual. I kept dancing. An invisible entity, Lucifer or Satan, grabbed me by the neck and pinned me to the wall. He choked me for about 13 seconds. I said in my head, "Go ahead and kill me so I can come to hell and kick your ass sooner." He let go. I danced all night long until my body was broken from it. I became accustomed to Satan hitting me and choking me. I would wake up to the feeling of hands on my neck and restricted breathing. My head would whip around when he hit me. It felt the way it would feel if the spirit of a hand was hitting you, but it was hard enough to move my head. Sometimes my head went back and forth, back and forth. I've woken up with broken fingers and bruises on my arms. I have friends that deal with demons and bruises on their bodies as well. And I also met some people who had been raped by demon entities too, and would be covered in, like, goo. Like, they'd be covered in their own bodily fluids, like, from orgasming from them. I went to sleep and had a dream about Elon Musk and David. They were drinking together in an expensive flat. I was caught in a video game that stole your soul. My consciousness was caught in a projected light, and I kept trying to escape, but I kept being dragged to different rooms in the flat. It was a demonic console. David got as drunk as possible, which was normal for him if alcohol was around. He was usually profusely vomiting by morning, but he seemed to hold his liquor better. He had told me he and Elon were friends, as he had Tesla shares and had talked to him to sell them. Strangely, I came across a video that showed Tesla-like coils in the middle of nowhere in Russia. The world powers were all in on these apocalypses together. There's a video out with Elon Musk's nanny telling a story about him as a boy. He used to astral project and travel through portals. She had asked his relatives if he was the Antichrist. They told her he would be prolific when it came to the mark that ushered in the rise of the Antichrist. In that dream, I kept like trying to get out of the like whatever this like the demon console. I tried to keep getting out of it. And David was there with Elon Musk, and there was like a party at like a beach house or a flat of some sort, and it had all white glass windows. And I kept trying to get out, and I kept ending up back in it, is what was happening. But I was in like different rooms, and I got out eventually. It neared Christmas, and I saw Donald Trump again. They showed me that I had been given a keyboard to bother all the Illuminati members I wanted to telepathically, with the exception of Orsini. A skeletal hand was hitting all the keys for me. I had been so tired I wasn't even trying to use it yet, or test it to see if it was real. I could hear the celebrities' voices when the keys were hit, as if I was tapping into their consciousnesses. This was supposed to be some sort of compromise between them and I, a prison of one's own mind instead of a real prison. I did not make a deal with them, for this to be their punishment, so it was just another test. I heard celebrities' voices anyways, and the Illuminati have something like a TikTok live in your brains that is part of the video gaming in people. It was supposed to be all the pedophiles in Hollywood. That was until the skeleton hand hit Orsini. Orsini was the one person I wasn't supposed to bother. Donald Trump came back on the live and stated how he was with Brock, which meant they were with Lucifer, and it all disappeared. I had visions of being with Orsini. I was a dog in hell, in his kitchen, or in the fourth dimension, whatever dimension they were in his kitchen with a collar around my neck, and he would read me the Wall Street Journal. When I started getting better at my craft, he showed me his house in hell, or the fourth dimension. It was gothic and beautiful. He said I would live there with him. I prophesied that Satan's consciousness was working through Orsini. I declined the offer. I didn't go home for Christmas that year because I was so sick. David got me nothing, and got his children nothing. Since then, David has gotten better and has started getting his children presents. We talk now as friends. But I realized that he had an entity in him at the time that this all was happening. I'm not sure. I don't think he's an NPC. Which the Antichrist, I'm hearing he's not. I, of course, spent a lot of money getting him brand new wardrobe and got his kids presents. I was exhausted. The Antichrist was feeding off of me regularly. He used to put his head on my back, and it would begin to feel like he was boring a hole in it. When I was sick regularly and there was nothing to feed off of, he would become angry and frustrated. He once told me, "I'm angry when you're happy." I just looked at him and said, "You're the Antichrist. You would be." I still didn't understand the phrase, "I became David." I didn't realize that the Antichrist was possibly feeding off of David. He had always said he was going to die early on because of something to do with his heart. So they feed off the person they're in. We had all the insecurities of a regular man, constantly talking about his testosterone and his penis size and it not being as stiff as it used to be, which wasn't true. But it was stuff that he talked about because he was self-conscious, so it was stuff that like a normal guy talked about. It didn't seem weird. I could hear him telepathically, and he acted like he had no idea what was going on. He took medication because he heard voices. I assured him that it was the government bothering him, but he would still take Abilify in high doses to try and stop them. He said when they talked about me, they called me Conspiracy Katie. I kept getting kicked off TikTok. I talked about the cryptids and the possibility of their existence. I mentioned mermaids and the Mothman, and I was thrown off. It made me realize that these things were real. Donald Trump had even come on during one of his speeches on our plane, and they began talking about end times and discussed that otherworldly beings would start coming out of the oceans. I had a vision that there were many portals in this ocean. We haven't even been to the bottom of the Mariana Trench yet, so the possibilities are endless. Chapter 20. I had a dream I was at my family's house. There were a bunch of mentally disabled people congregating on my lawn, and they just kept coming. There was a barbecue going on, and they kept flooding in from the streets. I looked up in the trees, and there were these spiders, bright blue and orange in color, in pods dangling from the branches. The sun began to go down, and the pods began to open. I went inside the house and found insecticide underneath the sink. As they came out, I sprayed all of them, and they shriveled up. Oh, my computer died. I will continue this next time. I will continue chapter 20. Thank you for listening.